Welcome to the Zayari Wellness Podcast, where we learn about other people's journeys. Regardless of age, race, religion, or status, we're all just human and have one thing in common: the ups and downs of life. Join me in welcoming our special guest, Monay, as we explore the effects of absent fathers.
My name is Denisha Monay Hopkins, and I am choosing to do this because I want others to feel like they can relate to this and feel vulnerable to talk about my topic that I chose of absent fathers. And my father has not been in my life since I was 5, so that would be a good topic to discuss.
Yeah, I think it's a very vulnerable topic. I don't know if a lot of people, most people just brush it off as like, nah, I'm good. Like, can't miss what you never had. So,
Mm.
how did you come to the point where you're just like, you know what, like, I want to talk about this? And like, what were your thoughts before about it?
Before it was, I have my mom, and I'm a woman, so I see her, and it's just I'm gonna and like her. Like
Yeah.
my dad was not there, and that's fine. I have to continue with life,
Yeah.
but I feel like that was also kind of one of those that face level, and not really getting deeper to, okay, is there something else to it? I feel like, oh, it's just my mom, because what if I have a husband and we have kids? And then there's a dad. Like, I need to think deeper into it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So at first you were just like, I'm a strong, independent woman. Like, I've seen my mom do the thing, and,
mm-hmm.
dad's not around. So, like, what? I don't need that. Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I was like, hey, like maybe things could have been different, but I don't know. I'd keep going with what I do know, what I see, until
Mm.
I saw some flyers. They were like, oh yeah, daddy daughter dance, and I was just,
Mm.
so that
Yeah. So let's take it back for the audience, right? Like, how was it growing up when you were younger, not having dad around?
it was. It was just, I would. What is the right word for it? I wouldn't say open. The world was just a blank canvas where it's just
Mhm.
like I'm making it as I go. People who have dads, okay, I interact with them like, hello, be respectful.
Mhm.
My dad would call sometimes because he was in jail.
Mhm.
That seems so stereotypical, but he
Mhm.
made his choices, and
Yeah.
me being young, he wouldn't really tell me until I got older, and
Mm.
him being there and being gone, and him calling sometimes, it was okay. I still have my dad. He's still alive.
Yeah.
I don't know the efforts that he could have put in then that probably would have made a difference today, but I still accepted that little bit,
Mm.
and I held on to that little bit.
Mm.
And so growing up, it was just like, okay, he's here, he's not, but
Mhm.
people who are here, I have, y'all continue with life.
Mhm. Yeah, so you were one of the kiddos, because I see it going one or two ways. Like, the
Mm.
other extreme is like, I don't have a dad in your house. Identity becomes about like not having your dad in your life, right? And you kind of like live in that. You seem to have the other side of it where it's just like, okay, fine, like, I don't have my dad. He's here sometimes, but other times he isn't. But you know what? Like, I'm going to continue on and live my life. So you mentioned daddy daughter dances.
Mhm.
As you grew up, at what point did you realize, like, oh, this dynamic maybe isn't the most healthy, or perhaps isn't like what would be considered normal or traditional?
Ugh. Father's Day. It
Mm.
When my grandma passed, I would do things for her for Father's Day.
Mhm.
So okay, I have my mom and I have my grandma. So once she
Mm.
passed, it was like, now what I do for fathers. I became mad. So I was like,
Mm.
everybody else has this,
Yeah.
and it's important. So now I don't. And it really started to weigh on me, where I just
Mm.
cried. It's like I don't have the person who I was celebrating this for,
Yeah.
and who is alive and supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be there. I can't.
Yeah.
So it made me very angry, and I just cried because I was so angry. But
Yeah.
that was when it really just changed for me. It was like this is serious,
Yeah.
and that it's really serious for me without him, even though he's here still.
Right. How old were you when you came to that realization?
Mm, 20, 21, 21, 21.
Oh, so you were like full fledged adult, really, at that point, where
Mm,
it didn't dawn on you until then.
hmm I just was
Yeah.
going life like on,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say autopilot, but it was just
Mm-hmm.
doing this and making these choices and
This is the way it is.
hmm and then
Yeah.
when I had to actually this moment changed,
Yeah.
and I have to figure out how to deal with this new way.
Yeah. I find it very interesting that you're like, I had mixed feelings because he was still here. Like he didn't pass away. It was one of
Mm,
those where it's like he was here, but it was just at a distance. I can recall, and I kind of want to preface by like sharing with the audience that it's not just fathers who are incarcerated. This happens when like parents are divorced or when parents are like separated. People really experience like hurt in the same way as if the parent wasn't there, in totality, right? And I would always say sometimes it may hurt a little bit more knowing that they're there, knowing that this person could have done more and they didn't.
yeah, yeah, and mainly because my sister, she's like that. She's
Mm-hmm.
completely like that. It was like, okay, he's alive, and he made no efforts. It's
Mm-hmm.
who is that man? I don't have no
Mm-hmm.
father, and it's just like, ooh, but that's not true. But I understand it hurt.
Yeah.
So he's here, but he's not present,
Yeah.
and that's really huge for her too. And that's I can't stop her from feeling that. I could probably help her
Mm-hmm.
with ways to you know navigate it, but
Mm-hmm.
it's that's that's honestly how she feels.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he didn't make no more than he did with those phone calls. She said she was young. She don't
Mm-hmm.
remember them. He barely talked to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get that too. And seeing that hurt too, because it was like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to feel that way, but
Right.
when,
Yeah. And
Mhm.
it really sucks because you have that like, but you're here, right? At the back of your head. And I find it interesting that you mentioned that like Father's Day was the time when your like grandmother passed away that like it dawned on you. Because I remember
Mhm.
myself, like my parents were divorced since I was very small. I lived in the States. My dad lived in Puerto Rico. And my dad
Mhm.
did call like every weekend. We were with him on like summers and like, custodial agreements and stuff like that. But it wasn't until a Father's Day when I was around
Mhm.
18, 19 that I looked at my stepfather, right? And I
Mhm.
started crying. I was like, why am I crying right now? And it's just like, my dad isn't
Mhm.
here. I couldn't get to celebrate these days with him. And then
Right.
looking back and it's like those birthdays. Dang, like you I couldn't
Mhm.
spend my birthdays with you. And then you look back and think about all the moments like, oh, I played sports. You couldn't see me play sports. I was on all these things. You couldn't see my achievements.
Yeah.
Like you kind of saw it from a distance. And I think it creates similar wounds as a
Mhm.
parent that like maybe it wasn't there. I wouldn't say to the same extent, but just sharing vulnerability so the audience knows like a parent that's not there doesn't necessarily mean like just physical
Yeah.
absence or death. It means like any type of distance where a two-parent household isn't together and is not functioning. It creates real hurt and
Mhm.
in children's hearts. And I love my dad, don't get me wrong, like he
Yeah.
knows that and we're great, but it is a real pain. And our search your and I circumstances were very different, right? So, did you ever feel that you had like any negative thoughts about yourself because of your dad's absence? Did it cause you to wonder, like, am I good enough? Like, I don't understand.
Not really my worth, like if I'm good enough or not. Negative thoughts was more with, do I know what that looks like? And I don't want to
Mm,
choose anybody because I don't know what that looks like. And what if
mm,
they're all like all men are like that? And I would try to brush it
mm,
off like, oh, it's not like I'm talking to people and they don't seem like him. But then the negative thoughts was, I don't even know him to
mm-hmm.
like a deeper extent to know.
Yeah.
And then
So
it's
your
like,
concern was more like, how is this going to transpire in romantic relationships? Like, how is this going to affect me when I choose someone to be in my life?
yeah, it's just like,
Mm,
okay, I was so young, I didn't get to really see much from him.
yeah.
And people would tell me stories. Negative, I gotta take it back. One negative thing I heard was how manipulative my dad was, and
Mm,
then me being compared to it. And
mm,
for some reason, I took that as a compliment. Like, I make y'all think of my dad like he was like this, and I was good at it back then.
mm,
So it was like, oh, oh yes, I am. I take that with
yeah.
pride. Until I got older, it was like, I know I can be, so I need to work on that to not use that into
Mm,
a negative way. So I'll be like, I'm not manipulative. I'm very persuasive.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and it's
Learn how to
just,
hone it in. Yeah.
because back then it was negative.
Well, did you kind of like wear it as a banner because it was like perhaps like the only connection that you had with your dad, that it was like, oh, I don't know much, but I do know this. So guess what? Like, I'm own
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I did. And it was
Mm,
like, oh, this is what my dad was like. Well, that explains a lot. I use that as a reason to why,
mm,
like, oh, I'm just like my dad. Like, I
yeah.
get it. And I know my mom, but
Hmm.
me and my dad have this to relate us that I know
Mm,
of, and I'm okay with it.
yeah.
And I was proud.
You're just like, it is what it is.
Right? You said what? Don't play because I get it from my dad.
Right. Like, yeah, I'm like my daddy. It is what it is.
Right?
I love it. We joke about it, but it's not funny.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just looking back on it, how I was
Yeah.
like, wow, huh?
You're like, oh, that's the reason. And I don't think a lot of people recognize the influence, right, that an absence of a father can have on a child's like perception, even like of themselves. Like you said, I'm gonna hold on to it even if it's bad. Or
Yeah.
it may become like a self-hatred if those qualities you didn't like. And we're like,
Mm,
I don't want to be like that. I hate myself because I hate my dad, right? So your mind equates the two as one. and
mm.
and it's not. And so you mentioned relationships. How has your dating life been affected as a result of your dad being absent?
I didn't, I would connect with people, like
Mm,
with men,
yeah.
and it's like, okay, everything's going great, but I wouldn't let them completely in
Mm,
because I would always hear that, oh, you got abandonment issues, and I'm like, no,
mm,
don't be in denial. But if I am sleeping, if we fall asleep and I wake up and that person, my partner, is not there next to me, I'll be like, and it's a whole panic, and
mm,
I didn't like that, and I was like, okay, now I don't like that. I feel like I have to depend on somebody.
yeah.
Like I'm getting too deep. This is too deep.
Mm,
So
yeah.
with relationships, it was just get to a certain level, and physical, like that was a lot
Hmm.
to give myself. Is like not because, oh, it's gonna make him stay, but because I connect that way,
Hmm. Yeah.
and
Because
that
you
was
didn't
hard.
know what emotional connection was or an intimate connection should look like with a man in a
Mm,
positive way, right? And the one
Mm-hmm.
thing you do have control over that we can physically see is what? Physical expression.
Mm-hmm. And that was easier to express than to get deeper and like open up. So okay, I can
Mm-hmm.
open up, but again, that's service level.
Yeah.
It's not, hey, I want you to know like this is something big to me,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to deal with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't really communicate that. I communicate it at a service level, like I
Yeah.
don't like that, and then be like, I don't know why, but I just don't like that, and they'll be like, well, why?
Mm.
I told you I just don't know why. So now I'm pulling away.
Yeah. How confusing is that in relationships for you and the other person to be like, I want closeness, but not too close. I want to
Mm-hmm.
love you, but keep your distance. I want you to sleep next to me at night so I feel safe, but maybe not, right?
Yeah,
How confusing was that for you?
it's very confusing because it's like I know I want to be close to someone. So why is it affecting me
Mm-hmm.
this way that I'm not allowing that? I know
Yeah.
I want. I don't know why I'm not allowing it. I never
Mm.
dug deeper to see or
Yeah.
find it. So it was it was difficult because they're always like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, toxic relationship, toxic people, and I'm like, well, I don't think so. We're there's good moments, there's bad
Yeah.
moments like relationship,
Mm-hmm.
but I was always thinking of them, like they're what they're doing to make
Mm-hmm.
me pull away. And then
Mm-hmm.
after the breakup, like after the relationships, I would think, but what did I do?
Mm.
And like I can't go any further because I'm
Yeah.
like, I wish I could talk to somebody, and I don't really want to talk to like my guy friends.
Yeah.
It was
Because it's
confusing.
that closeness. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to. That must have been really isolating, really
Mm-hmm.
lonely to experience.
I go into my little hermit shell and
Mm-hmm.
I sit and think. So
Mm-hmm.
I close out everybody and
Yeah.
I think, and then I'm like, what if I had my dad there to be the one
Mm-hmm.
to cry on like his shoulder, like I feel this way and he did this way and he gave me some advice. I know
Yeah.
that's not what he is now, but what
Mm-hmm.
about what if? And I didn't
Yeah.
like those what if questions
Hmm.
too much.
I
Mm.
think it's so perplexing because, I always tell everybody that we were born into connection. Like, if you really think about the dynamics of even how you were made in the womb, you were physically connected to your
Mm,
mom, right? When you were born, and you were born with a part of your dad, regardless of whether like he's in your life or not. Like, the fact is that their DNA is inside of you. You're connected to this person. And the
mm-hmm,
way we're wired as kids is I want mom and I want dad, right? Whether the brain kind of blocks it off sometimes as a protective mechanism. And that's why you're like, oh, it didn't affect me until later, right?
mm,
When the brain decided, okay, let's take the little mask off, let's unveil, right? And
yeah.
then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. And then everything floods. So it is confusing because you want to be seen and you want to be loved and you want to be known, right? I think that's
Mm-hmm,
all of humanity. Anybody just wants to be seen and loved. But when a person or a parent is absent, think about the role of a parent. Their role, almost in a way, they give you identity. They give
mm-hmm,
you love. They give you affection. They either build you up or tear you down. They are your first love
mm-hmm.
or your first heartbreak.
Yeah, that makes sense. Or I would be feel like I don't know what that's supposed to feel like
Yeah.
because I didn't have him there to feel my first true love. How I'll hear movies or see movies and hear like
Hmm.
men who have daughters. I'm like, yeah, she knows daddy's her first love, and I'm like,
Yeah.
sweet. I hear it, but I'm not connecting to it.
Yeah. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like a dagger every single time like you hear that. It's like almost a reminder of what you don't have.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't imagine the complexities. Like, right, the way that we learn to love, really, it's modeled at home. And like you said, if you don't have that, how am I supposed to connect with someone? And the crazy thing is that the brain makes these connections, right? Like if I were to play a song, your favorite song, it'd take you back to a specific moment in time, I'm sure, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
how the brain connects experiences and people. And so in your head, the dad, right, that wasn't there, anytime you see a male, your brain connects that with pain
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and all the feelings attached to that. And so all of a sudden, like we're giving that to this person that walks into our life, and it's like, here. And then your brain is like, danger. But then your heart is like, I want to be close. And then,
Yeah. Your brain's like, okay, fine, but cautious, cautious, you know.
right. And, I like how you said, like, oh, toxic. People are like, oh, that's toxic. Tell me
Mm-hmm.
about that word. Like, when was it brought up to your life? And like, why did that word come up specifically?
Why?
You can be raw. It's okay. I saw your face flinch for a second.
When
Hmm.
about 4 years ago, when I felt okay, I want to try doing it differently.
Hmm.
I I realized some things had hurt, and I was starting to deal with my emotions, and it was just at one point I just put my hands up, and I was like, I've never been able to click on a crazy mode, as they say,
Hmm.
and I did it. And after, I was just like thinking back on it, I was just like, I did not need that. And I was
Hmm.
like, there was so much more into it. And when I heard, oh, that was just your toxic time, and I'm like, so is there going to be more toxic times like that? Because I don't like that. It was just
Yeah.
where it's deadly and it's not beneficial to either party.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing myself to a really low level
Yeah.
because, oh, I'm hurt and this pain
Hmm.
that I felt, I'm going to cause it.
Yeah.
Uh, that's not how I wanted to do it, but it happened.
Yeah.
So I can't really just be like, oh, I wish I didn't. I feel like I needed it in a
Yeah.
sense to make some changes and make it look deeper too. And
Yeah.
it's like, I don't, just because I felt pain don't mean I need to, it doesn't mean I need to have that like cause anybody else pain. Maybe I need to again isolate.
Yeah.
Gotta figure it out. But
Yeah. It's just crazy to me, like learning how our brains work, and like I mentioned those connections, right? I'm pretty sure in that time where you had the toxic like time, it was really your way of coping with all of that. He just embodied the pain
yeah.
that somebody else committed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
And we
he,
do it, and we destroy our own relationships because of that.
yeah. And thinking about it, I was just like, I wanted to tell my dad too. I remember
Mm,
at the time, like, I did this. Like, oh my gosh, you probably went through that too because
hmm.
you've caused pain to someone.
Yeah.
And, that's not okay. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
Not like it at all, thinking back on it.
Hmm. But I do want to preface with saying, like, it's not your fault, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of the time we look back, and I think we all have moments where we're not proud of that we look and you're like, dang, like I could name plenty of times, right? Like, my past relationships where I'm like, yeah, I probably hurt this person, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not your fault because your brain, like, you didn't know how else to cope,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, and that was your way of just, you know what, screw it. It was I'm sure it was like your big fu to your dad, but at the same time it's almost like it's that inner child screaming, I want to be loved, I want my dad, where's my dad?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
But I'm glad that I know that now.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a self-sabotage,
Yeah.
like, to my relationship. But it's okay. It's just a lesson that we'll learn and grow from. I still
Yeah.
talk to them, and there's still love there, but it's like there's things we both have to work on if it were to work.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And I'm sorry, like it touched a very like
mm,
sensitive topic.
it's okay.
I want to commend you, one, for like being vulnerable, and secondly for taking ownership, because I think a lot of the time we get stuck on either this is just the way I am, not
Hmm.
recognizing the pain behind it, right? Or and the other point is, I am the victim and we stay there.
Yeah.
But we don't, a lot of people don't take the next step, which is although I have been victimized, I don't have to live being a victim. And I have to
Hmm.
take responsibility, even though somebody else hurt me. And I have to clean up the pieces, even though it's not fair, for my
Yeah.
sake.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Because you are reflecting and you're looking back and you're like, that's where that comes from and that hurts.
Hmm.
But you're
It's like,
cleaning up the pieces.
it's good. And it's one of those where I don't I don't want to feel that. So
Mm-hmm.
reflecting is, it's kind of like people avoid looking
Yeah.
back. Like you said, staying in the victim
Mm-hmm.
mindset. I would just be like, what happened? Move along, keep going forward. And
Yeah.
looking back, it's just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now, why did I feel that way? Why did this happen? All those emotions,
Yeah.
the bigger picture. I
Yeah.
never connected it to my dad not being there. It
Yeah.
was kind of, I'm this woman and I feel this way. So, yeah, and my reasons, what I believe in. And that's why I acted that way.
Yeah.
But that it was deeper to him. But I
Yeah.
wanted to tell him about it. It's like, because you caused pain,
Yeah.
and this is a result
Yeah. Did you
to
ever
your.
have that conversation with him?
No,
Mm-hmm.
he tried to. He tried to, and I was like, well, whenever you have time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when he'll have time. Mm.
Yeah. You know, one thing comes to mind as you're talking, because it seems like you want that closure, right? Like you, what do you do when the other person isn't involved in the closure process?
Mm.
I think that's the hardest part, right? Because in our mind, closure looks like perhaps maybe reconciliation, where it means like, okay, you understand me, I understand you, and now we're on the
Mm.
same page, we can move forward. That's ideal, but it doesn't happen every single time.
Yeah.
And a big question I get asked as a therapist, well, how do I move on without the other person then? Like, how do I, and the way I like to describe it is like, well, if you wait for your healing and your process
Mm-hmm.
based on the other person's ability or inability to do something with you, you're going to stay a prisoner in your own life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like handing them the keys to the prison cell when you have them in your hand. Um, and I don't know if you've ever tried this, but this podcast is completely different than my other podcasts, but because I don't like to leave you empty handed, right? You know, a coping skill that most people don't understand the value of, like your brain doesn't know the difference between you actually having that conversation with the person
Mm-hmm.
or you just processing the thought, but it's still a coping way. So like one thing that I tell people to do is like, hey, look, this might be tough because putting pen to paper makes it real.
Mm-hmm.
Write a letter to your dad of everything you wish you could have said, all the dirty things you want to tell him that you never could tell him. If you want to say F you, go ahead and put that in there too. Right? How it affected you, right? Write
Mm,
that letter and you will begin to see like the emotions will flood, but then you'll start to process because again, your brain does not know the difference between I am having this conversation with my dad
mm-hmm.
or I'm just writing it out and getting it out. And writing is a powerful tool. There's so much science behind, they say journaling. I don't like to say journaling because some people don't like to journal, like, right. But write your thoughts out, find an expressive way to get it out. That's how you can heal without the other person. And of course, you have to grieve and allow yourself to experience the pain and get out of that avoidance because avoidance will keep you stuck. It serves a purpose to protect you
Yeah,
temporarily, right? Like it serves a purpose, but you don't want to stay stuck in avoidance. And in order to move forward and get that like kind of like reconciliation with yourself,
mm,
really, is to grieve. Allow yourself to experience the anger, the sadness, like all of it in its
yeah,
due time. That resentment is real. Like it's real. But avoiding it, right, doesn't get us anywhere. Like it keeps us stuck.
yeah. Man, I'll probably have to agree.
Oh
I'd
yeah.
have
It's
to.
okay.
I'll
I
probably
can
have to
drop it
agree.
out.
Okay.
No worries.
I'll have to grieve. Definitely have to grieve. I remember I did write a letter, but it was me just venting, like what I would say. I thought about rereading it to see like how I felt now, but I wasn't ready to do that. So maybe
Mm,
I actually take that time to grieve and, do I feel this way still? Like
mm-hmm.
still something to
Yeah.
to make the waterworks. But
Yeah. I think it's a two-part process too. It's just like, writing how you feel is one part. And then grieving the role you never had. Like, what does that mean? Like, I'm going to grieve the fact that you weren't this father that I imagined or that I wanted you to be in my
mm,
life. Right. And so, like, grieving something you never had is also very real,
yeah,
and it's write a letter about, I wish you would have.
mm,
I wish you could have. You never did this. You know what I'm saying? And again, that's another way your brain doesn't know. It's almost like you were talking to that person and read it out loud. I don't care what nobody says. Like talking to yourself is not bad. Now, if you talk and answer and have a whole full fledged, like that's a whole different story. But I feel like I do that sometimes.
I find myself too.
That's
I,
right. I said
yeah,
it.
I probably will do that. Just that second part because I'm so used to trying to. Okay, I want to get it over with. I don't want to
Yep.
next. Let's,
Nope.
and ugh,
That is not how grief works. I think our generation has a hard time with accepting the fact that it's not a race. It's really a journey. Healing is not an overnight thing. Healing is not some hell. Okay, let's put it this way: if it took you 20 something years to recognize that your father was not in your life, right, and 20 something years to like actually see that and process, what if it took you another 20 to heal?
yeah.
Like having this expectation that it's going to happen like from one day to another. No, you just have to be committed to the healing process. And part of that is understanding that it takes time.
Ooh, and that's the hard part. And it takes time. It's like okay, give myself like a month,
Yeah.
and that's
You're
that's
like,
probably
that's it. That's it.
yeah. I'm like I need more time. Okay. um, but I feel like if I want to get to that point where I want to be at, then I'm fine with taking all the time that I need.
Yeah.
It's also, hey, be patient. It's gonna
Mm-hmm.
take some work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, trying to figure out the work that's part of my journey. But
Yeah. Yeah.
mm-hmm,
There's different ways to go about healing, but you got to set yourself up for realistic expectations. Like this is why I hate like self-help gurus or whatever, where they're just like, you can will yourself through this. they're just really teaching you to deny and create unrealistic expectations for yourself,
Yeah.
really.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to get over this really
Right.
fast? No.
30 days to break a habit. And it's
No.
like, oh, you got to
No.
be consistent with that.
Correct. I hate it because a lot of people don't understand that, especially when you have a parental wound.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I can tell you that it comes out not just in relationships. This is so big for people to recognize. Wounds run so deep. Again, they're the first person to make you or completely break your heart.
Mm-hmm.
And no parent is perfect. I'm not placing that expectation on anybody. I'm not saying that, but the fact is, if you're a parent and you're in connection with your child, you're going to hurt them. It's a part of the process. It's
Mm-hmm.
realistic. So I'm not claiming to tell people to hate your parents. I'm really not. I
Right.
am telling people that there is a very real hurt that comes with parenthood, both for the parent and the child. Because I am pretty sure that your father looks at you and he does not feel proud of himself.
Mm-hmm.
You're a constant reminder that he failed in this area of his life.
Mm-hmm. He said that. He said he wished he could go back and this, and if he had known what he knows today,
Yeah.
then he probably would have done this. He felt he could have done more, and he always asked for forgiveness. He's like, if you don't believe anything or want to hear anything, know that I love you and I've always loved you.
Hmm.
And it's just like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
not ready to go into that. I'll
Yeah.
accept it to an
Hmm.
extent, but okay. It was like, woulda, shoulda, coulda, woulda. Now
Hmm.
I'm gonna do now,
Yeah.
and he just continues to say like, I'm sorry for this, and I'm just like, okay. I don't know why
Yeah.
it feels like a lot. Just be like, okay, like I get it, but I guess it's just his way of um
Hmm.
trying to deal with it. Like it's
Yeah.
eating at him. And I'm
Of
trying to.
course.
I'm the parent now. Okay, calm down.
Oh,
Breathe.
no. I honestly think it's because you haven't processed and you haven't dealt with, and if you accept his apology, it means you have to accept all the pain that comes along with it. Guilty as charged.
Yeah, okay.
No, it's really true. There's pain on both sides. I don't think, and again, this is not to bash parents at all. Like, I have so much compassion for parents. Like, I work child services, and I could see how the parents beat themselves up for getting to where they got to. And I don't want to be this way. How do I break this habit? Or how do I stop doing these things? And I don't think I ever approached any of my parents with "you're a piece of crap." No, like I got to understand everybody has a story. Like,
Mm,
nobody wakes up and wants to abandon their child, really.
yeah.
Nobody thinks that, hey, if I leave my partner, it's going to affect my child in this way. Even
Mm,
if I'm the best parent in the world and I have a good relationship with my kids, it affects the kids regardless.
mm-hmm.
And the kids will have to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
I'm not saying stay in a toxic relationship, because then you're teaching your child a whole different thing, right? So you
Yeah.
have to pick the best of worst evils,
Yeah.
right? In a lot of situations. But the wounds run deep. And people don't understand that your brain, like, even as a parent, like when you look at your child, they will remind you of all of your flaws and all of the pain that you didn't work on.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Your mom, can you speak on that a little bit? On
That's,
how not having your dad, having your child has impacted even in parenting.
um, the emotional part.
Hmm.
Like my baby is sensitive. And I know
Hmm.
he's a child, but there's things that will really make him cry. Like
Yeah.
the commercial with the animals and the eyes of an angel song comes on.
Mm. Oh.
He'll look at me and he'll be, and I'm like, come here. And I'm like, baby, I get it. I get it. But like my first reaction that I beat myself up about, my first reaction is, are you really crying? Like my face is just, really?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, come here. Because it's like,
Yeah.
I just don't want you to feel like you can't feel that. Like, I'm
Hmm.
trying to show him it's okay to feel
Yeah.
your emotions. It's okay. So
Yeah.
I'm just, come here. I know. It's like, don't worry. When you were in my belly, I cried about some pigs. It's okay to cry. So what makes you sad? So it with him not being there and me being a parent now, it's like I'm I'm learning. I'm learning from
Hmm.
him. Like I didn't have that, but I want you to have this because I don't know if it's me feeling a hole where
Hmm.
I'm trying to tell him if you want to say this, you speak on how you feel. Your
Yeah.
voice matters.
Hmm.
With my parenting, it takes a lot of pause, like a quick pause, try to think,
Yeah.
and how is this gonna affect him? And so it's like that emotional part where I'm a block, I'm a hard rock,
Hmm.
and to be open with him and show him. So
Yeah.
then it's like fighting myself.
Hmm.
Like I want you to be able to express your feelings, but
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. So now I have to address that with myself, so that way I can be example. And
Hmm.
whew,
Yeah. Is it because you learned to kind of be tough because you didn't have,
mm-hmm,
that like nurturing like from your dad that you wanted?
mm-hmm.
Hmm.
It's
So
like
your first instinct with your son is like tough it up.
yeah, yeah. Like for certain things, I'll look toughen up. But if it's something where it's like, okay, this might be sad, then
Yeah.
I'll care. But other
Hmm.
things where I might not think it's a big deal, he might.
Hmm.
So then I have to be like, okay, it's little to me, but it's big to you, and I want you to.
Hmm.
I see that this
Yeah.
matters.
Yeah.
Don't be. You don't have to be hard and toughen up about it. It's okay. You feel that way. But then
Yeah.
the other side is like, but I'm still tough, and so you need to. Like, I don't want to, the child, I don't want to push that onto him.
Yeah. Yeah. And your mind could have went like, remember how I said the brain connects, right? Like different things. Your mind could have easily seen your child and it said, male, don't get close. This is
Yeah,
this person that's hurt you before. You ever like ran into maybe those thoughts? Because I don't think people talk about that as parents, really.
one one time where he was like, I want nail polish, and I was like, baby, that's a girl thing. And then I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of just like something in my head was just, don't do that. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, we can have nail polish. Like,
Mm-hmm.
mommy wouldn't want you to have nail polish because I see
Mm-hmm.
it this way, but if you want to, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's the only time. And he got nail polish. And then he said he didn't want it on. And I was like, but okay. So
Yeah, yeah.
that's
So
it.
what are some like misconceptions that you hear about, daughters that don't have, dads? Because I hear so much toxic
Mm,
stuff, like, or see a lot of toxic stuff online, like, oh, that's why because you don't have your dad in your life, so you don't know how to do blah blah blah. Like,
yeah,
talk on that.
mainly that. It's, oh, you know, women who never had their dads growing up, they don't know how to love a man. They're worse than those with their fathers. And I'm like, but how would you know? Everybody's experience is different.
Yeah.
It's like it's not that I don't know how to love a man. It's just
Hmm.
I didn't have that teacher to show me certain things on when it came to choosing that man. But
Exactly.
then I hear about some women who have their dads, and I'm kind of like, why are you acting like this? So
Right.
it's a difference. They always,
Correct.
people feel
It
like,
has nothing to do with whether you have your dad in your. It's okay. So women may have had their dad in their life who was
yeah,
abusive, who was
right,
toxic,
right, or just worked all the time, and but we
wasn't
come,
present.
yeah, it's like okay, they still have their dads too, and 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 the main thing I hear is that like we're not worthy enough,
Mm. Like
and
it's
it's
your fault that your dad's not in your life. It's your fault.
yeah, it's like oh yeah, you didn't have your dad growing up. You're not really a good woman
Mm.
because you don't know what it is to be a man, or what
Mm-hmm.
he thinks or feels because you didn't have him. And I'm like, what was I supposed to do about it? So I don't want to have to learn from like
Mm-hmm.
any man, but if you're willing to teach, I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
So I can go and, but
Yeah, and I think a lot of men say that to pass the buck
mm,
of maybe not taking responsibility for their own actions, in a relationship. I think I'm not even just going to say men; women do it too. Like, it's not a gender thing. This is a
yeah,
human thing where
yeah,
it's like they try to blame the other gender for whatever their own faults are. Because I'm pretty sure I'm like, well, are you communicating effectively in that relationship?
mm-hmm,
Are you setting appropriate and healthy boundaries for you to be able to both express yourself? Is it a one sided argument? Are you
yeah,
mad because you don't have your way all the time? And for
mm-hmm,
those men who did have their dads in their life, do you have a healthy relationship with your dad? Do you know what that looks like? Let's talk about your mama issues. Let's
yeah,
talk about if you're close to your mom. Or did she smother you? Because then you probably want me to smother you.
mm,
And that's the type of love you're looking for. And that's not what I'm here for. So then
mm-hmm.
it's your fault. Everything's your fault.
Yeah, or how some women they have their dads and they're like, yeah, my dad spoiled me with this, and
Correct.
just like, okay, well, I didn't have mine, so I had to work for it
Hmm.
and spoil myself. But you have your dad,
Hmm.
you spoil yourself too. I'm not saying like women who do have their dads who dad weren't absent or were present
Hmm.
are any worse. This I feel like there's no better worse to it. We're all at our own levels.
Hmm.
So just
I just like to say for those toxic, because I'm like, if you're promoting toxicness, you're probably toxic too. I'm sorry, that's just my opinion. Because
mm,
I'm all about like I'll state the facts, I'll point out the negative, but I will also point out the positive, and I'm not gonna assume that it's one gender or another. It is a human
yeah,
response. Period.
mm,
This whole like, oh, 2023 was full of, oh, men should do this and women should do that from people who are probably single. Let's
yeah,
just be honest.
but like it's giving. What do they say? I feel like it's a younger generation now that would say, what do they say? Like, oh, he's too sassy for me, and I'm like, he can't express his feelings. I'm so confused with that.
Men can't express themselves, right? Like,
He just what?
yeah,
Mm,
yeah, and it's really sad to me that we have, especially as minorities, because like the most accounts that I see promoting this are minorities, like
mm,
and sharing this. Like, there's so much division about like relationships and calling, oh, you're toxic, you're this, and don't date women like this, and don't date men like this. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but if you listen to advice from a single person, it'll always lead you to singleness.
yeah, yeah. Like I
Go
can,
ask married folk.
yeah, right. I can understand where you're coming from. Am
Hmm.
I exactly follow that? No, I have goals. I have like things I want to do and become. I want to get married.
Hmm.
I want to have a family.
Yeah.
I want to show kids like, hey, it can be like this. I want to show the old people, yeah, we can do it too.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
And
to
and I love their outlook. I you're so like still gentle hearted. You didn't allow this experience of not having your dad to make you bitter, you
mhm,
know, and upset. And I'm sure there's bitterness in there somewhere. Like, we all have it. Again, like, it's a human response, right? It's not
mhm,
about a bitter woman, because there are bitter men too.
yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Again, it's a human response, and it's natural because it's a response to, I was treated unfairly, so I'm
mhm.
upset about it, right? But how did you navigate like those challenges, with not having your dad and like running into these barriers in your relationship, realizing that it's you didn't have dad in your life and that's why these things are coming out? How did you navigate that?
Isolation.
Mm,
Because I didn't want to put it on anybody else.
mm,
I needed to figure out more into me.
yeah,
And so whenever like a situation would come, like with a friend and she's mad at her dad,
yeah,
and I'm like, in my head, must be nice. But like just to even talk to your dad about this and y'all not agree on it. So
Yeah.
you just be like, I hung up. But for me, like, it's like, well, why not try to understand? Like, where it's
Mm,
coming from? You have that. Thinking about different situations that I go through, it causes me to really think into when I get to by myself later on.
yeah.
Isolation, putting myself in situations to where I am hearing other people's stories. So it's
Hmm.
like, what would I do and why?
Hmm.
Like if I
Hmm.
were in that situation,
Yeah.
and then
I
how
think
I.
there's a balance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a balance between I come from the premise that like there is no good and bad way of really dealing with like isolation or emotions. Like I don't attribute emotions to being good or bad. I don't
Mm-hmm.
attribute things like isolation or connection as being good or bad. I think there's a time and place,
Yeah.
right? And so when you isolate, there's positive and negative effects to it, right? Like the benefit of isolation, which people are like, I can't stand being alone. Some people need to, right? Because the benefits of isolation is I get to reflect. Because
Mm-hmm.
guess what? When you're quiet and you have time to reflect, you think about the things that hurt.
Yeah.
You think about the things that maybe like are not comfortable, or if you don't, you're probably trying to keep your mind busy so that you don't, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so isolation will teach you what are the things that are in my heart and why. And it's a good time to reflect and evaluate.
Yeah.
You
It
don't
does.
stay there forever.
Yeah. Yeah. That part.
Key.
That part. I tried to because I really, that was that rushing moment where I had isolated myself and I was like, I just need a month. And the
Mm-hmm.
people close to me felt like I didn't care anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I just go through these moments that I just need my time, my space. Like my battery's low.
Yeah.
And if I'm okay to talk one day, my battery's fine.
Mm-hmm.
However, there's some stuff I really want to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to communicate that, learn to communicate, like,
Mm-hmm.
give me that space because I'm
Yeah.
going through something right now. I need to figure it out.
Yeah.
And thank God they were accepting of it. But it was
That's
hard.
good.
A
Yeah.
really negative part of it because I didn't communicate that. I just kind of closed
Shut the
off.
door. Hmm.
Hmm.
So you talked about isolation. Are you still in a season of isolation, or do you think that you're kind of like learning how to balance between being like isolating and working on yourself, like involving other people in the healing process?
I believe that my isolation season is over.
Hmm.
I am learning to balance. It's
Hmm.
been, I felt like a lot better because
Yeah.
I communicated when I need it.
Yeah.
And thank goodness for the close people I have. They
Hmm.
understand that. And they're like, we know it's something you do. And I'm like,
Yeah.
thank you guys.
Aw.
It's a balance.
Yeah. So they're not taking it personally that you need some space when you need it,
Yeah,
right? I think
yeah.
it's important to have those healthy people in your life that kind of like know the difference between I'm gonna take it personally when
Mm,
you're upset or when you're dealing with something, or versus I get it. Like I may want your attention or may want your company, but like I respect the fact that you're not there right now.
yeah. Thank
I think
you. Thank
was that instrumental like process, or was that really needed for you in that time period?
you. It was needed.
Hmm.
At that time it was really needed. It was that was the whole reflecting back on my toxic moment,
Hmm.
why it was toxic, how it affected me, really digging deep into that.
Hmm.
So I needed that time. And
Yeah.
they as they felt that I came out a lot happier, and I'm like I needed it, and
Hmm.
God's timing. Because my dad
There's a
started,
time and place for everything.
my dad started to try to message me more and call when he can. And I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm glad it was. around this time where I'm learning balance, because if you had tried back then, I probably would have been too angry
Yeah.
to even try to accept or be open.
Yeah. So what would you say is like a common misconception that people have that you'd like to clear up if the audience could take anything away from our whole
Mhm.
conversation we've had?
It is okay to feel what you feel.
Mm-hmm.
It does not make you less than anybody else, more than anybody else. If you decide to wear certain parts of your parent on your sleeve proudly, it's okay. You
Yeah.
know, embrace how you feel. Embrace all of it. You're
Yeah.
human. And just don't let it define your whole purpose. You completely.
Mm.
So that take away that.
Yes. I love that. I love that feedback because it's true. Like, you are not your mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
You are not just the bad things that you do, just the bad thoughts that you think, right?
Yeah.
You are a whole person. I love how you said it. Don't let it define your whole being, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's
And
so true.
right, and not even the parent not being here. That's
Hmm.
not you either. Like,
Hmm.
they're also human.
Hmm.
I understand they were there, they weren't there,
Hmm.
life, but what you choose to do is what you choose to do, and how that will affect other people, friendships, actual like partnerships, kids.
Hmm.
It, it's a lot, but nobody has
Yeah.
to rush. Like you said, there's no race,
Yeah.
and it's a journey. It's
It
definitely a
really
journey.
is. Yeah, absolutely. And I love how your outlook is both like positive, both realistic as well. I think you shed really good light on a lot of the struggles and even ways that not having your dad impacted you in many areas of your life. So I would like to thank you for being vulnerable, for being open, for allowing the audience to know, hey, they're not alone and you can be open and vulnerable. And that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me this chance too. It's I didn't think it would actually get me to cry. Like, I thought it was okay, I'm being open. This is normal, but
Mhm.
there is something deeper that I'm still working on. So I
Yeah.
know I'm not done, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm definitely okay with that.
I
It's
love
not,
it.
it's not going to be just an easy journey.
Yeah.
There's going to be some hard times, but it's okay.
It is definitely worth it, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And just I want to thank the audience too for being with us through this journey. I know it's not a sensitive, it's not an easy topic to talk about because I there's so many of us that don't have our fathers present in our lives, whether it's through prison, right, jail, whether it's through divorce or separation. But you can heal from parent wounds. It is possible, and it's definitely worth it. If you like this episode, follow us for more mental health education and humor. Don't just learn about mental health, apply it by playing the game of your life. Create your free account for exclusive access to communities and a wealth of resources.